MTV's Daria underwent a bit of a shift in its last couple of seasons. It started as a show about a brilliant but antisocial teenage girl navigating high school life in a world that seemed to favor the vapid and shallow. In its later years, it was definitely still that, but with a greater focus on Daria Morgendorffer's love life. At the center of this shift was Tom Sloane, whom Daria dated in the 5th and final season. I won't say Tom is the most hated Daria character, but he might be the most hated Daria character. Certainly the most controversial. Everyone has an opinion on Tom, so much so that all these years later, fans are still debating whether or not he ruined the show. But the Tom era was actually kind of necessary to give Daria a more complete character arc, because ultimately, this part of the story isn't really about Tom, it's about Daria going through something everybody does, or at the very least something everyone should go through. A worldview growing and expanding as more life experience is gained. In this case, through her first real relationship. It certainly wasn't as simple as she would have liked, but hey, life rarely is.
Look, all that matters in a relationship is that you like the same pizza toppings.
So, quick recap. Through Daria's first 3 seasons, she had a crush on Trent Lane, her best friend Jane's older brother. After learning one embarrassing lesson after another, Daria managed to get over her crush on Trent in the season 3 finale, and in that very same episode, Jane started dating a prep school boy named Tom. Daria initially hated Tom for taking up all of Jane's time, but the 3 of them were able to come to an understanding. Throughout season 4, Daria and Tom started to realize that they had a lot of common interests, as well as a very similar sense of humor.
Hey, the prince. Planning on taking over a country?
Well, not now that you've ruined the surprise.
This made Jane suspicious, especially once her own relationship with Tom started to fall apart. On top of that, there had been lingering tension between Jane and Daria since season 3. It all reached a boiling point in the season 4 finale when Tom and Daria impulsively kissed behind Jane's back. Jane and Tom broke up, Jane and Daria put their friendship on an indefinite pause, and Daria tentatively started dating Tom. Everything was resolved in Daria's first TV movie, Is It Fall Yet? Daria actually breaks up with Tom here, both out of guilt for betraying Jane and because she's put off by Tom's wealthy family. Daria and Jane eventually reconcile, and Jane even convinces Daria to give things with Tom another shot, setting the stage for this new romance to truly begin in season 5.
How are you doing?
I'm okay. She's pretty okay, too.
Okay, with that out of the way, let's get into it.
It's about time.
So, by the season 5 premiere, everything is pretty much back to normal in Lawndale. In fact, Tom is barely even in this episode. Seriously, he has one scene, and it's not even a minute long. He's literally just here to give Daria some advice regarding the main plot, which otherwise has nothing to do with him.
So what? You're still right.
Thank you.
But Daria and Tom have their first real hiccup as a proper couple in the very next episode's sappy anniversary. It all starts when Daria's sister Quinn points out that Daria and Tom's 6-month anniversary is coming up.
Unless you don't count from the first date, but instead from the time you kissed him behind your best friend's back while she was still going out with him.
Quinn also gets it in Daria's head that if Tom doesn't do anything special for their anniversary, that means he doesn't really care about their relationship. Daria doesn't tell Tom any of this, but instead starts dropping hints that maybe they should go on a more traditional date. Tom just kind of laughs this off, and Daria starts to think he's taking her for granted.
I know. Why don't we go to Chez Pierre? Remember when we went to the drugstore and read the greeting card poems aloud? That was a fun date.
Yeah.
So right away here, they're continuing a major theme from both Daria's crush on Trent in the first 3 seasons and the love triangle storyline in season 4. That being that Daria is more like a typical teenager than she cares to admit.
I know I shouldn't care whether or not he gives me presents or remembers our anniversary, but I think I do. And then I hate myself for caring.
Daria often makes it clear that she thinks high school is beneath her, but when it comes down to it, she's just as susceptible to the same dumb teen drama as her peers, whether it's piercing her belly button to impress a crush, fighting with her best friend over a guy, or getting mad at that guy for forgetting it's their anniversary.
I can't say anything because then he'll know I care and it won't be the same as if he thought of it himself, and oh God, listen to me.
Basically, Daria has built her personality around not caring about the same things that other teenage girls care about, and when she realizes that she may actually care about those things after all, she gets angry at herself, like she's somehow betraying her own morals by having perfectly normal feelings.
Wow, you sound almost human.
And if Daria didn't feel taken for granted before, she definitely does when she finds out that Tom did make a big romantic gesture for Jane back when they were dating, like hiring a restaurant band to play her favorite song.
But they didn't even play the whole song. And the breadsticks were stale. I mean, really stale. Bad breadsticks.
The next time they hang out, Daria snaps at Tom while continuing to dance around the issue, and this highlights another recurring theme in the show.
I don't want to talk about it.
You're mad, but you won't tell me why.
Like I said in the Trent video, vulnerability might as well be Daria's kryptonite. And if you look back at the first movie, Tom recognized this pretty early.
Why don't you say what you're really afraid of? The idea that you might actually start caring about someone. 'Cause that would make you vulnerable.
Daria is happy to be brutally honest about something when she doesn't have any real skin in the game, but she'll do anything to get out of discussing something that really affects her emotionally. She'll either passively ignore a problem and hope it goes away, actively run away from it, or, in this case, deflect and stonewall until the other person leaves.
Just forget I said anything.
If you're not going to tell me, I can't do anything about it. Okay.
But it's here that we see the first bit of growth, as Daria starts to acknowledge that her way of doing things only ends up harming her relationships.
Boy, jump down someone's throat, refuse to tell them why, and suddenly they stop calling you.
I should say, Tom isn't exactly the best communicator either. This is something we saw during the love triangle arc. Yes, Daria should have told him what was bothering her from the start, but something clearly was bothering her, and it honestly took Tom way too long to pick up on that. He kind of lacks emotional awareness in that way, and it makes him come off as a bit dismissive.
Normal dates are for people with no imagination.
Either way, though, Daria goes over to Tom's, and the two finally talk it out, and right off the bat, Tom brings up an interesting point.
Quinn brought it up.
So you're mad at me for forgetting something you forgot yourself?
I'll dig more into this a bit later, but for now, Tom assures Daria that he does care about her, and that he's just not into corny gestures. When Daria brings up the things he did for Jane, Tom reveals that he only did those things because he knew that relationship was dying, and was basically trying to overcompensate. In the end, Daria and Tom find a happy medium.
Hey, now that I know these things are important to you, we'll celebrate.
But they're not.
Okay then.
But we can celebrate anyway.
Tom's next appearance comes 3 episodes later in the story of Dee. This episode not only highlights Tom's supportive side, but also shows how it challenges Daria's cynical worldview. Daria writes an original short story with the goal of submitting it to a publication, but gets cold feet when she starts to think her writing isn't good enough. Still, she lets Tom read the story, and he loves it. He even gives her a lead on where to send it.
I read the story my English teacher sent to Musings magazine, and this is much better. Why don't you submit it to them?
Unfortunately, the magazine rejects Daria's story, which makes her really upset. Any writer will tell you that dozens of rejections are just a part of the deal. But yeah, that first one usually hurts. Daria takes this out on Tom because in her mind, following his advice just opened her up to failure and humiliation. And Tom suggesting she try again doesn't exactly help.
It's not enough to get rejected once. You want me to get rejected dozens of times?
Come on. It happens to everyone.
Tom's attempts to defuse the situation fall on deaf ears, and Daria storms off. Not long after, though, Daria realizes her mistake when she helps her father Jake get over his own creative disappointment.
I went out on a limb and took a chance. That took guts, didn't it?
Yes. Yes, it did.
Daria invites Tom over so she can apologize, and Tom is ecstatic when he finds out that the rejection letter from the magazine actually encouraged Daria to submit again in the future. Because of her cynical outlook, Daria had never even considered that those words of encouragement might actually be genuine. But thanks to Tom offering some perspective, she starts to see that even if putting herself out there doesn't always work out, it is worth trying.
Don't they always say that?
No, Daria, that's great. My teacher got a one-line note.
Two share a kiss, which I'm pretty sure is their first of the season. That's kind of wild, considering we're already 5 episodes deep at this point. But don't worry, Daria's mother is there to spoil the moment.
Rice cakes? Oh God, no!
For context, this is the payoff to a running gag where Helen is nervous about Daria being alone with Tom, and tries coming up with excuses to interrupt them. Funny enough, this kind of foreshadows a later episode. In the meantime, though, Tom just kind of chills for a little while after the story of Dee. He has minor appearances in Art Burn, where he and Daria go to see Jane's work at an art fair, and Lucky Strike, where he gives Daria ideas for test questions after she's forced to become Lawndale High's newest English teacher. That's a long story, just go with it.
Hey, how about asking them this? If Verona had had metal detectors, would Mercutio be alive today?
However, the next major development comes in the episode One J at a Time. Daria's parents suggest she invite Tom over for dinner so they can get to know him a bit more, something Daria's been dreading.
Why don't you invite him over for dinner?
Because I haven't taken complete leave of my senses.
Interestingly, though, she's actually not worried what her parents will do to embarrass her in front of Tom. Rather, she's worried that Tom will be too mean to her dad. If there's one thing that Daria and Tom both love, it's lobbing sarcastic insults, both at each other and at others. But Daria thinks her dad would be too easy of a target for Tom. And yeah, Jake can be kind of eccentric. In this episode alone, the man goes ballistic while trying to catch a squirrel that's been getting into the garbage.
You won't get my shrubs! Do you hear me? You won't get my shrubs!
Jane tries to assure Daria that it'll be fine, but Daria is not convinced.
Well, I don't think you're giving Tom enough credit. He never once said an unkind word to my parents.
He never met your parents.
Oh, yeah.
Daria and Helen strike a deal where Daria will invite Tom if Helen tells Jake to rein it in for one evening. But Jake can't help himself, and he rants about the squirrel at dinner, and to everyone's surprise, Tom is fully on his side.
I'm with you, Mr. Morgendorffer. Some squirrels got into our cellar last winter and ate up all the wheat thins.
Tom.
What?
They did.
Daria thinks Tom is being facetious at first, but she realizes just how serious he is when Tom and Quinn's date, Jeffy, rush outside to help Jake catch the squirrel.
Look, there it is. Let's go!
Tom?
Jeffy?
This turns into a full-blown guys' night with Jake even taking the boys go-karting. The whole thing is a pretty hilarious derailment. At first, Daria's kind of annoyed at Tom for running out on dinner, but she ultimately shrugs it off. And yeah, that seems fair enough. Knowing Jake, this all could have gone a lot worse.
Why don't they just put Marmaduke to sleep?
Next up is Life in the Past Lane. In this episode, Jane starts going out with a guy named Nathan, who's really into the swing revival movement. Basically, he's obsessed with the fashion and culture of the 1940s and 50s, and once they get together, Jane starts playing along.
But we went to an antique car show Sunday, and we're starting foxtrot lessons tonight.
Daria immediately clocks Nathan as a weird jerk, but considering what happened last season, she and Tom aren't exactly eager to rain on Jane's parade, at least not too much.
For a minute during the ride there, I thought you were going to go for his throat.
See, Jane just thinks Nathan is cool and good looking, and in her mind, the retro act is just a fun hobby. The rose-colored glasses come off when she realizes Nathan is actually an elitist snob who takes the whole thing way too seriously.
You own sweatpants?
Get out.
Dilettante.
Poser.
I mainly want to talk about this episode for two reasons. For starters, it really drives home the fact that the love triangle debacle is just water under the bridge at this point. I mean, it was obvious from the start of season 5 that things were cool, but it's really refreshing to see Daria, Jane, and Tom all hanging out and having a good time. They're even comfortable joking about what happened.
If I didn't have the nerve to pick up guys, you wouldn't have a boyfriend.
Oh, great. I'm not gonna have to date this guy now, am I?
Hey!
But Daria and Jane do have a little spat in the middle of this episode, and it's here we see a new recurring theme start to emerge.
You don't have to put Nathan and me down just because you and Tom are in a rut.
Yeah, so Daria has a tendency to overthink her relationship with Tom based on other people's opinions. She didn't care about their anniversary until Quinn got in her ear. She hadn't even considered that they might be in a rut until Jane said that they were. Both times, Daria rocks the boat with Tom, and both times it catches him completely off guard.
Do you think we're in a rut?
Where'd that come from?
To be clear, I'm not really faulting Daria for this. You have to remember, she's never dated anyone before Tom. She doesn't really know what a good relationship does or doesn't look like. It makes sense that she'd take Quinn and Jane's comments to heart. After all, they have more experience in the dating world than she does, so they must know what they're talking about, right? But while outside advice can be beneficial, it's important to know that every relationship is different. If the way you and your partner do things works for you, so long as it's healthy and mutually agreed upon, it shouldn't matter what anyone else thinks. Daria just hasn't quite figured that part out yet. But again, she's kind of learning on the job here, so to speak. We see more of Daria's insecurities on display in the episode Ant Nauseam. This is actually a sequel to the season 2 episode I Don't, where Daria is forced to go to her cousin Erin's wedding. In Ant Nauseam, we find out that Erin and her husband are getting divorced, with Helen getting roped into being Erin's lawyer. Erin's mom Rita, Helen's older sister, comes to stay with the Morgendorffers so she can help with the process. The problem being that Helen and Rita cannot stand each other.
Mom broke every rule of parenting the way she favored you.
It's just like you to declare the rules for everyone else.
Amid this sibling rivalry, Daria starts avoiding Tom.
It's probably not a good time for that. Thanks, though.
No thanks, Nessa. Sorry.
Daria initially claims that the family drama is just so overwhelming that she doesn't have the time or energy for Tom anymore. However, she eventually admits to Tom that all the talk of divorce got her wondering if the whole romance thing is just a waste of time. It's a brief moment, but Daria opening up to Tom here feels like a real step forward regarding her willingness to communicate and be vulnerable. But we're also reminded that communication is a two-way street. Tom gives a very, well, Tom response, which again comes off kind of dismissive and makes Daria clam back up.
Does that freak you out and scare you?
No, I guess I could see that.
Thanks.
After one more minor Tom appearance in the episode Prize Fighters, we come to probably the most important episode in Daria and Tom's romance, My Night at Daria's. Daria and Tom are having a study date in the Morgendorffers' living room, but retreat to Daria's bedroom after Quinn won't stop bothering them. The two of them accidentally fall asleep for a few hours, meaning Tom has to sneak out of the house in the middle of the night.
Oops.
Oh, God. We've got to get you the hell out of here.
He almost makes a clean getaway, too, with an assist from a very drunk Jake, but Jake is also the one who ends up selling him out.
Hey, I forgot to offer Tom some lasagna.
What?
Damn.
Daria manages to convince Helen that nothing happened and it was all just a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, Quinn overhears that Daria had a guy in her room all night and blabs to her friends. This starts a rumor that Daria and Tom had sex, and as you'd expect, the details get wildly distorted.
Oh my God.
And Daria, since when do you own a pair of black high heels?
We find out that Tom actually had floated the idea of the two sleeping together before, but Daria said she wasn't ready, so he dropped it. But the whole rumor mill situation gets Daria thinking, and we once again see those third-party perceptions start to influence her decision-making. Because of the way everyone is talking, Daria gets it in her head that sex is necessary in this relationship. So if she and Tom aren't having sex, that must mean there's something wrong. Though Jane makes a pretty great counter-argument.
Anyway, being in a relationship can't possibly hinge on physical intimacy, because that would mean our parents are still doing it.
Which is absurd.
Still, Daria ends up buying into the notion that sleeping with Tom is the only way to deepen their relationship, so she tells him that she is ready after all, even though she obviously still has some hang-ups.
Really? Are you sure?
Sure, I'm sure.
She flip-flops quite a bit because of those hang-ups, which confuses and frustrates Tom, and to be fair, this whole thing was kind of sprung on both of them, all because of an honest screw-up.
You said you weren't ready, so okay.
Oh, fine. Just take me at my word.
That is what you said, right?
It doesn't help that Daria gets a lot of conflicting advice in this episode, none of which puts her at ease. One minute, Helen telling Daria what a huge mistake her own first time was. The next, Daria's friend Jody is insisting that sex is nothing to be ashamed of, even if she doesn't seem to fully believe that herself.
I promise. Soon as my parents are dead, I'll tell you all about it.
Part of Daria is convinced she needs to have sex with Tom, while another part is convinced that doing so would be the biggest mistake of her life. That's a pretty tough position to be in, especially for someone who's still figuring out relationships on a fundamental level. And yet again, Daria finds herself deferring to people who are technically more experienced, but who also have their own experiences and opinions to go on. She doesn't really trust herself, though eventually she does give Tom a firm answer, and the two set a date.
I'm ready.
You're sure?
Positive.
Spoiler alert, she is not actually sure at all. Because of this, she no-shows her planned rendezvous with Tom and actually breaks up with him via a Dear John letter. Tom confronts Daria to find out why, and she says that because she couldn't go through with it, that must mean their relationship is doomed. Tom responds by saying he doesn't agree with that and that it's okay if she's not ready. We then get a pretty telling exchange.
It's not that I'm not ready. It's that I'm scared.
Same thing.
No, it's not the same thing.
Daria explains it's not that she's nervous to have sex, it's that the mere idea of that much intimacy frightens her in a deeply intrinsic way. She's also afraid that if they did have sex and Tom was disappointed by it, that could ruin things between them as well. She figured Tom would want to break up with her because of all of these insecurities, but Tom assures her otherwise and the two get back together.
I thought that's what you'd want.
Think again.
The reason this episode is so important is because a lot of the recurring themes I've talked about really kind of resolve here. For starters, Daria finally seems to learn that lesson I mentioned earlier, that she should have more confidence in her and Tom's unique way of doing things and shouldn't treat other people's beliefs as universal truths. There's also the communication aspect. Daria openly admitting why she's so afraid is honestly a huge moment for her. It finally seems to click that nobody can help her solve an emotional problem she's having if she won't even say what it is first. This goes hand in hand with the big one. Daria's fear of vulnerability and intimacy, a fear that was apparent long before Tom even entered the picture.
And I'm so defended that I actively work to make people dislike me so I won't feel bad when they do. Can I go now?
Daria is someone who puts up walls. By her own admission, her MO is to reject people before they get a chance to reject her. And even the people she does let get close, like Tom or Jane, she still tends to kind of keep at arm's length. But here, Daria proves that she can let those walls down and take one step closer. More importantly, she learns that things can be okay afterwards.
You know, I think that despite ourselves, we just reached a new level of intimacy.
And live to tell about it.
This brings us to the season 5 finale, Boxing Daria. This isn't a very Tom-heavy episode at all. They establish right away that he's at his family's cove for a wedding, with Daria having declined to tag along. The meat of this episode is all about bringing the show full circle and forcing Daria to really confront her identity as an antisocial bookworm. Daria begins to spiral after painful childhood memories start to resurface, memories of how her perceived social problems impacted her parents' relationship. She tries to get some answers as to what exactly happened all those years ago, but Helen doesn't give her anything. Daria contemplates running off and calls Tom to ask if his invite still stands. Tom says that he still wants Daria to come up to the cove, but warns that the trip has been really boring and she probably wouldn't like it very much. Daria does not take this well.
So you lied to me too.
What are you talking about?
You said you wanted me to come up. Now you say you don't.
That's not what I said at all.
Daria tries one last time to get answers out of her parents. Helen and Jake finally tell her that they were both going through a lot 11 years prior, and Daria's problems at school were simply the last straw that triggered a big fight. This is a lot to take in for Daria, who storms off and takes the car.
Hello, Mrs. Sloane? Is Tom there? Well, would it be okay if I took you up on your offer to visit?
She plans to drive up to meet Tom at the Cove, but doesn't get very far as she narrowly avoids being involved in a massive pileup. A shaken Daria goes to a diner to calm down, and it's here that the show highlights who the real most important person in her life is. I mean, if you want to talk about Daria letting her walls down, this really feels like the emotional climax of the show in a lot of ways. And while Tom did a lot for Daria's character growth in the later seasons, I'm really glad that they gave this moment to Jane instead, since she was such a great friend to Daria from day one. They definitely had a rough patch, but we should all be so lucky to have a friend like Jane. Anyway, Daria eventually patches things up with her parents, and Tom gives her a ride to school as the episode comes to a close. But while this is the final episode of the final season, it's not the actual series finale. That honor belongs to Daria's second TV movie, Is It College Yet? As her senior year at Lawndale High wraps up, Daria is in the midst of applying to colleges. Her first choice is Bromwell University, where Tom is a legacy. Her second choice is Raft College in Boston, which is still a very good school, but far less prestigious than Bromwell. Daria joins Tom and his mother on a visit to Bromwell, and they agree to swing by Raft afterwards. But the road trip doesn't exactly go to plan. First off, while Daria and Tom are both very academically gifted, Tom's status gives him an undeniable edge here. I mean, his uncle literally donated a wing to the school, and the whole thing clearly rubs Daria the wrong way.
Are you as full of Bromwell lore as Tom?
I doubt it. He seems to be really full of it.
To make matters worse, the Sloanes run into a family friend who just so happens to be a teacher at Bromwell. He offers to put in a good word for Tom if they stay a bit longer. Tom and his mother agree, and they're late to Raft as a result, causing Daria to miss her interview there. And once again, Tom lets his lack of emotional awareness show.
Good thing we didn't get to Bromwell this late, huh?
Tom, of course, gets into Bromwell. Daria is rejected by Bromwell, but accepted into Raft. When she tells Tom what happened, we get this exchange.
I did get accepted to Raft.
I can't believe it. I was sure you'd get in.
Did I mention that I was accepted at Raft?
Yeah. I mean, that's good.
So, yeah, I've talked a lot about Daria, but this movie really highlights Tom's flaws as a character, primarily his selfishness. We saw this trait on full display during the love triangle arc. Part of the reason things got so out of hand there was because Tom couldn't bring himself to break up with Jane before he and Daria got too close. Then, once they did break up, he immediately ran to Daria. Like I said in the video on that saga, it was a difficult situation for everyone involved, but while I don't think Tom is a bad person by any means, he definitely tends to put his own wants first. This is also the first time since the previous movie that this family's wealth is a significant factor. This kind of makes sense. Tom is very much a recurring character in the show after all. I know laying out all his appearances make it seem like a lot, but trust me, he doesn't occupy as much screen time as you might think in the grand scheme of things. Tom never quite graduates to main cast status, so they don't dig into his family life all that much. But we shouldn't forget that the Sloanes' wealth was an early point of contention between Tom and Daria. I bring this up because Tom is very much a rich kid who doesn't want to be perceived as a rich kid, which could also explain why it's seldom brought up in the show. He's the kind of person who would say, "Oh, I'm not rich, my parents are." The fact that he lives in a mansion but makes a show of driving an old beat-up car kinda says it all. And we see in the first movie that he actively tries to distance his image from his family's lifestyle.
You know, your whole elitist world.
It's not elitist, and it's not my world.
Look, Tom not wanting to flaunt his wealth isn't a bad thing, but as we see in the second movie, he is kind of a hypocrite, as he's more than happy to embrace his family status when it benefits him. You can definitely see why Daria is so annoyed.
I'll get in the old-fashioned way. Bribery and nepotism.
She's even more annoyed when Tom offers to get his parents to write her a letter of recommendation for Bromwell. Daria initially refuses, not wanting to be a part of the nepotism that's been bothering her so much. However, she eventually accepts as a part of a deal to get Jane to apply to an art college in Boston. And despite the doubts that kept her from applying in the first place, Jane does get into her dream school as a result. Tom's letter doesn't make a difference for Daria though, and she's hit with another rejection. Daria and Tom go out for pizza to talk things over, and after congratulating Tom, Daria makes the snap decision to end things.
That's a nice thing to say, even if that Daria voice of yours makes it sound like a kiss-off. Wait.
I think we should break up.
This feels abrupt, but it honestly makes a lot of sense. In the Trent video, I talked a lot about compatibility. How Daria was initially infatuated with Trent, but got over it when she realized just how fundamentally different they were. With Tom, it's a bit more complicated. At first, Daria wanted nothing to do with him. Over time, she realized that they had a lot of chemistry and shared interests, but once they actually started dating, she started to notice that while they are very similar in a lot of ways, they're worlds apart in others, particularly when it comes to Tom's lifestyle. I mean, let's let's be real, Daria and Tom were at odds for most of their relationship, and this is technically the third time they've broken up. The writing was on the wall here. Don't get me wrong, Daria really valued her relationship with Tom, and she learned a lot about herself from it, but it had run its course. And once it became apparent that they'd be going to different colleges in different cities, the decision was clear, and Daria stands by it despite how much it hurts them both. After the breakup, Daria and Tom have one last talk. Daria tells Tom she's glad they dated and that she's grateful for the experience, while Tom tells Daria how highly he thinks of her.
I really look up to you, and your opinion's important to me.
The two ultimately agree to stay friends and check in on each other every once in a while.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Call me. That'll be nice.
Daria and Jane go on to graduate from high school and toast to their upcoming college life in Boston as the credits roll on the series for the last time.
Me at BFAC, you at Raft. You think it's true that things happen for a reason? Nah.
Now that we're at the end of this multi-video journey through Daria's love life, do I agree with those who say Tom ruined the show? No, not at all. For starters, Daria is just a great show from beginning to end. It managed to maintain a high, consistent level of quality through its 5-year run. Sure, some episodes were better than others, but there was never a jump the shark moment for me. Nothing got ruined here. I do get why a lot of fans don't like Tom. A major character being introduced later in a show's life is always kind of a hard sell, and it certainly doesn't help if they're initially written to come between a friendship as iconic as Daria and Jane's. But another reason Daria is such a great show is that it never really got stale. Like I mentioned in the love triangle video, changes to the status quo are often necessary to keep things interesting, and the final 2 seasons really embraced that without ever losing sight of what makes Daria Daria. Besides, like I said, I think the final season shows that Daria and Jane's bond was only strengthened in the end. They were put to the test and they came out on the other side.
It would have been good to see Tom, but this way I got to talk to the person I trust most.
Still, I can also understand not liking a certain creative direction, but you have to let creatives tell the story they're inspired to tell. In a similar vein, I've seen a surprising amount of people say they don't like Tom because they would have preferred if the writers figured out a way to get Daria and Trent together instead. I get that Daria and Trent are a popular pairing among fans, and I'm certainly not going to tell anyone what they can or can't ship, but in the context of the show itself, this frankly would have been a really bad idea. The entire point of the whole Trent saga was that he and Daria were never going to get together, and Daria had to learn to accept that and move on. To throw all that character development out the window in the name of fan service would have been a massive disservice to both Daria and Trent. Daria and Tom were never really meant to be either, at least not long term, and that's the point. These stories were never about Daria getting a happily ever after. They were never even really about the guys she liked. They were about Daria learning to step out of her comfort zone, embrace her emotions rather than run from them, welcome new experiences, accept that she can be wrong sometimes, and realize that her worldview doesn't have to be set in stone, especially not at such a young age. They were about Daria learning these lessons as a teenager so she can hopefully benefit from them as an adult.
Stand firm for what you believe in, until and unless logic and experience prove you wrong.
People don't like breakup endings because there's this notion that it just makes everything that came before feel like time wasted. But Daria is a high school show, and high school is the time where you have those messy experiences, where you learn who you really are, but it's ultimately such a small part of life. By the end of the series, Daria still has so much time ahead of her, and it's honestly so refreshing to have a teen-oriented show that knows how formative those years are, while also acknowledging that it's not just okay, but often necessary to move on. That high school romance doesn't have to be forever. Tom's time on the show was abrupt and often turbulent because that's how life can be. The people who make a profound impact on you usually enter your life without warning. Sometimes they stick around, sometimes they don't, and that's okay too. We're all on our own journeys. It's just a matter of making the most of it when our paths cross, for however long or short that may be, and carrying what you learn with you through whatever comes next. If a textbook misanthrope like Daria Morgendorffer can learn that lesson, well, maybe there's hope for all of us.
You're getting soft around the edges, Morgendorffer.
Maybe. Or maybe you've got glaucoma.
Folks, thanks for tuning into another Daria video. This was once again another great script by Noah Dominguez. Please check out the link in the description to see more of his work, and stay tuned for more Daria videos coming soon.
I stay mellow watching Johnny two cellos. He talks cartoons, he's a really cool fellow. He keeps you posted on adult cartoons. If that's what you're into, then grab a spoon and a very big bowl of your favorite cereal. Feels like Saturday morning cartoon material. Johnny two cellos, watch him on YouTube. Now enjoy this groove and bust a move.